What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have another album review for you. This, once again, comes to us courtesy of Screaming Toilet. Again, it's a fun site full of pop culture reviews on movies, TV shows, music, even toys, some podcasts. Lots of cool stuff there. Definitely check it out. There will be a link below. So tonight I am reviewing Reckless Manslaughter's new album, Caverns of Perdition. This comes out on the 13th of September on FDA Records. This band is an old school death metal band from Germany. This is the band's third full length, but this is their first one on FDA Records. And it has some awesome album cover artwork by Dan Seagrave. And if you're familiar with death metal, chances are you're familiar with his artwork. So the album kicks off with Blast into Oblivion. This is pretty much kind of a pace setter song. It's very straightforward. It has a nice double time, double bass rhythm throughout, good tremolo chugging. Yeah, pretty much all the hallmarks of old school death metal. And you can see where it kind of straddles the line between more European-style death metal and American-style death metal. There are parts in here that are kind of thrashy, much like the Tampa scene had with bands like Cannibal Corpse. And then there's more European flair, which sounds closer to Finnish death metal like Amorphous here and there, and then even Swedish death metal like Unleashed. This is where you pretty much get a good sense of their production, which is pretty solid on this. The bass drum is very punchy. The guitars have a nice crunch to them. Everything pretty much sounds in place. Vocals are very deep and pretty well enunciated. They kind of remind me of Chris Barnes and maybe a little bit of Nathan Explosion in parts. Well, this is a pretty decent opener. It's really not particularly that memorable, and as the album goes on, there are far more memorable songs, but this is a decent sample size of what they got, so not too bad. Then we move into Unleash the Spirits of the Fallen. This one starts off with a little bit of kind of an epic build-up, nice and slow and groovy with some cool guitar melodies, and you can really hear the bass in the mix on this. And then it moves into more thrashy blast beats and tremolo riffing. All this is really good, and we even get a little dose of Hyper Blast, which is kind of a hallmark thing of the band Cataclysm. So if you're familiar with them, you kind of know what that sounds like. It's a pretty interesting beat. Now, unfortunately, it kind of loses me at the chorus because the chorus is kind of dull. The riff that carries it isn't particularly interesting, and the chorus is essentially repetition of the title, which definitely reminds me of the less than interesting parts of Unleashed's discography. And this, unfortunately, is a bit of a theme on the album. There are a lot of choruses that really fall flat, even behind really good songwriting till those points, which almost made me wonder why even bother having a chorus in the first place if it's going to be kind of lackluster anyway. Now, I thought the riff after the chorus was really interesting, and that one seemed like more of one to build a chorus around rather than the one they had, but that riff only appears for a second and then quickly moves on to the verses. So it's a decent song, but it kind of left me wanting a little bit more. Now, unfortunately, this album has one severe low point in my opinion, the song Operation Chastise. This is unfortunately kind of a bargain basement groove metal song. It feels like a B-side from 6 Feet Under with a little bit of death and roll slapped in there. It is just kind of a generic bland song, and it really doesn't go anywhere. Doesn't even clock 3 minutes, and I'm glad I didn't hang around longer because it just really isn't very good. It just seems really bland, and I don't know why it's on here considering when you listen to the rest of the album, there is a lot of really good songs on it. Now, the whole mood of the album really starts to shift around the instrumental into Caverns. This is the first track I really fell in love with on here. It is a almost death doomy sound with lots of dissonant guitars. It is really, really awesome, and as a mood builder, there's a cool acoustic interlude in it. This is really good songwriting. I don't know why something like this didn't pop up in another song on here. This is one of the best ones on here, and I had to wait through 3 or 4 tracks before that were okay to kind of not good. Now, after this song is where the album really starts to pick up. Catacombs of Perpetual Damnation shows off a little bit of Finnish death metal style to it. It has a lead melody that is very reminiscent of early Amorphous and has almost kind of a folky sound to it, and I really, really got into that. Kind of reminded me of Demolish in some ways too, with its weird angular riffing. And it includes a breakdown with a kind of growled spoken word that definitely reminded me of Nathan Explosion, especially on the song Awaken on Deathclock's first album. Kind of goofy, but still really good, and his delivery is really solid on here. This was also the first one I thought the chorus was actually pretty good on here. It actually brought the whole song together, rather than just be a glaring moment that was kind of okay, surrounded by a pretty decent song. Another one of my favorites on here was Decay and Embryo. This one has a really cool thrashy feel to it, fierce chugging machine gun guitars. It almost kind of reminds me of old school death metal, but mixed that with Sodom and Creator. Nice heavy song. There's even some crawling riffs in there that are very reminiscent of death. And then comes this part that has an audio sample on it that I recognize immediately. They sampled Ghostbusters. They sampled the whole scene where the guys are pretty much telling the mayor that the end of the world's coming if they don't go out there and save them. And yet we even get the dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria part. I appreciate the fact that instead of going for a horror movie excerpt or something like that, they went with one of my favorite movies of all time, and something that is definitely not death metal. Just a fun sample that, well, people my age are definitely going to get real quick. Awesome song throughout. I really love this one. Even without the Ghostbusters sample, it was great. Now, the song that I absolutely loved in here was the closing track, Funeral Master. This is 100% an awesome Death Doom song. It clocks nearly 11 minutes, and this is where all their songwriting flair really comes together. This has bits of Black Sabbath and Candlemass mixed with Hooded Menace. It is an incredible, well-written song. Lots of gorgeous melodies in here, but a nice dirge-like feel throughout. And it really works. This is like one of the best songs on here. It even crescendos into this really cool acoustic outro that just really packs all the wonderful feelings that Doom usually does. So yeah, the back half of this album is exceptional. Actually, the last 5 tracks, which this is only a 9-track album, but these last 5 tracks were really incredible. And honestly, some of those songs should have been a little bit earlier in the album, just to kind of stave off this slow start that it had. So all in all, I'm going to give it 3 stars. I think it's a really good album. Some earlier stuff on the album is okay. There's one definite song I did not like flat out on it, but the back half of this album is really well written and really well done, and I'd like to hear more from these guys, especially more towards what they were doing in the back half of this album. And throwing another Ghostbusters sample, that was fucking cool. So if you liked the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. We do shit like this all the time. Catch you guys later.